Hey guys, I am back for day 21 of committing to 5 days of live streaming. And this week, I want to get back to how we create possibility, how we take some examples of the type of things that we want to create in our lives, whether it's a project or a dream project, business, a side hustle, being a solopreneur. I was talking with my friend Josh Boone. I was on his podcast last week, and that's one of the things that I mentioned came out of doing this live streaming. Great. And one of the things we talked about was what gets in the way of people who set out to do things like consult or freelance or do something other than leaving their job. Um, the sort of stereotypical example is to go off and run a surf school, teach people how to surf. That's I think that example is in the 4 Hour Work Week. So many people read that book, but when it came down to creating a muse, a lot of us got stuck, and we don't know why we got stuck, and we will go on for years taking this business course, buying that book, subscribing to this person's email list, attending this seminar or conference, trying wildly different things, and nothing ever sticks. And what causes that? So part of what causes that is a lack of a built out like interface for how we engage the world. The other part is who we are being, and the being is how is our very deep seated programming. Another word for it is our deeply held beliefs that we are not aware of that get in the way, right? And I'll give an example. So, say for example, um, you have trouble writing content. A lot of these programs deal with content marketing. Yeah, you have to learn how to write emails. You have to get on LinkedIn and write a lot of email. Yeah, write a lot of LinkedIn posts, for example. And then you sit down to do it, and you get stuck, right? And uh, because there's many steps in between there, between your mind coordinating with your body, coordinating with how you in particular operate. And what we said was that one of the reasons why so many people fail at um, at venturing out to become a solopreneur is also because a lot of these programs are one person's solution for what worked for them, and that you have to modify and massage and piece together different things in a way that works for you, where you find flow, um, where you find enjoyment, where you can actually show up every day like what I'm doing, right? The reason why I'm doing this is because I like to get on camera and talk. I like meetings, or not meetings, but I like collaborating and working with people live. I like whiteboards. I like doing things on paper together in groups live where there's a set, time limit. So if you like that, then you should create everything from this format, like live streaming. So, for example, I'll, I'll give you an example. I've I've spoken out loud, and I've mind mapped enough content to write books from that, right? Between using some AI system and transcribing and just printing it all out and picking out the gold, if I put that together, that's now a book. Whereas if you ask me, okay, we'll sit down and write a book, write notes, I can write when I'm doing, you know, pen and paper. When it comes to typing, that's a lot harder for me. So, because we're human beings and we have a limited time on this earth, instead of getting delving deep into why that is, we just work around it. We just work around it. And so the faster we can find workarounds, the faster we can implement, and the faster we can start to see results, right? So another reason is seeing those results, is being patient enough to to keep working on something without giving up, to then see some progress, right? And we said last week, or in the past couple weeks, that one way to do that is to decide. You decide. Part of the system of you is you deciding what progress is. So, for example, if you get a LinkedIn posting, if you find a post that you like that somebody else wrote, I'm using LinkedIn as an example. This applies to anything. And you like and comment on their post, and you can say, "I got a result for today." The result is, "Hey, um, somebody liked my comment," or "I'm going to comment all day until I get a like," or "I'm going to comment 5 times a day, and once I get to that five, I can tick off a mark and say I did it, and I can go to bed and not feel like we usually do, feel guilty, like we didn't get anything done, right? The reason why we feel that is because we're using somebody else's standard of what done is. And if we can pick our own standard, we can stay in the fight, and we can get here, and we can stay uh, in this journey longer. The longer we can stay in the journey, the more likely it is that you'll actually start to see results eventually. Okay. So the other reason, and after this, I'm going to go back into mind mapping. The other reason is that we don't want to be seen to be failing, right? And we said that one of the ways around that is is to is that we have to get a certain we have to be comfortable with being wrong, and then less wrong, and then less wrong, and then less wrong. It's just like in design. So in design, there is no terminal, like, point. There is no uh, there is no apex. There is no top of the mountain with which, or by which, a design is now perfect, is now done. That doesn't exist. Okay, everything can always be improved infinitely forever. So you have to arbitrarily pick a date and say we are done at this date, right? So what we have to do is we have to be comfortable with being wrong, and just understand that it's part of this game. We're going to be wrong, and that's okay. But we can be less wrong over time. Okay, less wrong over time, and then we start to get a few wins, and then many wins, and then there's an inflection point where we achieve the windfall. So, for example, we partner with somebody who has a big following, and that gets us all the followers we need to be in to have all the clients we can handle for like that year, right? But we have to get through that point where we are drumming up the momentum. And so we said the quote, "Do not wait until the iron is hot to strike," right? There is no moment that we can see that will happen. We have to create those moments, right? We don't wait for it, we create them. Very, 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 two very different things. And I'm going to mention a movie after this. Do not wait until the iron is hot to strike. Rather, make it hot by striking. We make it hot by striking. This is part of, one of the things I learned in some performance coaching, some really intensive coaching I took, is this thing called the creating perspective. It's with John Patrick Morgan. So the creating perspective is that everything outside of our everything outside of us, we create our experience of the world. And if something in your world is not to your liking, you have to start taking actions towards it. Right? We have to start. Um, a good example is if you've ever seen the movie. the Bourne identity. So at one point, Jason Bourne is trying to lure out um, lure out I think it's called Treadstone that's trying to kill him, right? So he knows he's being followed, but he's intentionally taking actions to lure these people and to get them to make mistakes. So likewise, we have to begin with action. And since we're relying just on our instinct and intuition and just being inspired, actually doesn't matter what the action is to start. We just start doing things, right? There's another great book, Altered Carbon. So in Altered Carbon, the main character, right, in part of his envoy training, right, and this really is connected. I mean, you could think of the creating perspective as similar to envoy training in that um, you have a circumstance that you want to act on, and so you start doing things. You start throwing things out into the world and seeing what sticks. But how you make the other side, like your enemies or somebody, how you make your enemies or the people who are spying on you be make mistakes and reveal themselves is by you start doing things. So we have to start doing things, right? Emailing people, calling people, right? And usually it has to do with people, asking people questions, asking people to sit down for a coffee meeting, right? Everything that you're creating, base level of actions is just talking to people. And a lot of us will sit behind our computers and we will look things up. And that's activity that leads to nowhere. Instead of looking things up, find somebody to ask. Find somebody to ask, right? That puts your energy out there far better in terms of networking and people you're going to meet, because people can bring you the shortcuts. A lot of the shortcuts we get in life come through people. So for example, um, I was able to volunteer at a design conference, and I got into the conference for free, right? And then from that, I met the founder and the creator of the conference, actually, right? And so, and from that, I got other connections from that person. Oh, you also know this person? Y- You you know both these people, and they're both connected. What do you know, right? So that's how it works. That's how it works. I'm gonna bring up my mind map, and the example I want to talk about while I'm bringing up this mind map. The example I'm bringing up is from the movie. It's a Christopher Nolan movie. It's called Tenet. I think that's his most recent movie. It's 2023 now. So I took my sons to watch that during COVID, and without giving away. Well, okay, I'm just going to tell you the main thing I got from it. I'm not giving away anything, but the protagonist, the main character, uh, learns that an activity he's involved with was actually initiated by him. Right, he has some sort of amnesia where he doesn't remember. Right, and once he realizes that he's in charge of all these actions instead of stumbling into all of them, he can now start making assumptions and then making decisions. So now, instead of him just feeling pushed around on this sort of weird chessboard that's going on in the movie, I'll just explain. I'll I'll leave it at that. You have to watch the movie to understand what I mean by chessboard, and I'm not giving anything away by saying that. But watch the movie just to think about um, how do you show up differently knowing that you're the leaders. For example, if being the man of the house, you're the leader of your family. If you're not taking a lead, that vacuum gets filled because nature abhors a vacuum, right? And we're a part of nature. So even in our relational dynamics relating to people, there can be vacuums, right? So if you're the manager of a team and you're not managing, and nobody ever told you, hey, you're the manager, you're the one who's supposed to be deciding this and this and this and who does what, right? The team falls apart because it's not being managed. Likewise, your life can have things in it that you don't like because you don't realize that it's not life acting on you, and it's not everything outside you acting on you. There's a dance back and forth between you and what's outside of you, between the world and people and objects and information and knowledge and intuition and ideas and concepts. It's a dance back and forth, but you lead the dance. If you think of like some couples dance styles, like this like TV show called reality show called Dancing with the Stars, right? So even with dancing, there's a lead. So there's a dance back and forth, and there's tension between you and the world, in, between what's inside of you and what's outside of you, to be more accurate. So there's this dance and there's tension. However, even with that tension, you are the lead. You are the lead. You are the one that goes out and shakes things up and moves things around, right? Just like the example of the uh, Kovac in Altered Carbon, right? Or the protagonist in Tenet. Once you realize you're actually in charge, it's like Neo. Once he realized that, oh, I actually control this matrix, he said no, and the bullets stopped and just dropped in front of him, and he could pick the bullet up and look at it for what it is. It's an object that's here to serve him, right? Steve Chandler has this awesome um, recording speech he gave, and he starts it with saying his hand works for him. His hand does things on his behalf, but our brains don't work like that. Often, our brains betray us, and they distract us, and they actually get in our way. but but the brain is an organ, just like the heart and the liver and the hands are parts of us that are supposed to work for us, but often our brains work against us, and it's part of the beings, part of the very, very deep foundational base level programming that you have to dig under all of these memories and all these perceptions and all the things that you picked up in life. It's hidden deep down there, right? Joseph Campbell says the cave you're afraid to enter holds the treasures you seek. So you could that could be looking at your very deep programming that's actually kind of painful to look at, because nobody wants to believe that they've been getting in their own way this whole time. And that's what you realize when you start digging. You realize that, and it can be really depressing. I remember when I first started digging. I mean, I had like panic attacks. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. I was like that anxious. And when you realize that there really is nobody in your way, and you create obstacles for yourself more than anybody outside of yourself could, right? Right, because of not being able to think outside the box, not being able to poke the box. Poke the box is really a good example of what I'm saying with altered carbon and tenant. Once you know that you're in charge and that things fall into place when you start acting, you do what Seth Godin is called. I have that book here. It's called Poke the Box. Poke the Box. What's the box? What's the box? The box is all of our perceptions and what we think is true, and how we are modeled the world, how we believe that the world works, right? And most people never actually poke it at all. Most people never really investigate whether or not their model of the world, of themselves, of people actually is valid. They just shout it and and insist on it and do this like kind of temper tantrum that little kids do, where they stamp their feet and they just cover their ears and they say, "This is my model of the world. This is my model of me. This is my model of other people, and I'm not gonna let it go." There's very few people who actually can calm down and start poking at their models, right? And one of the ways of poking, we mentioned, I think I've mentioned this a couple times since I started this live stream, is what Scott Adams says is um, one of the ways that you can test your worldview is by making predictions. So this model that you have, can you use it to make predictions, right? If if your predictions always end up wrong, it's possible that your assumption, your core deep beliefs the belief under the belief, the meta belief is maybe be something we have to work on. Luckily, I'm here, so you can work on it with me, right? And if you want to book a call with me and look into that, I'm going to put up my let's see, I'm going to put up my LinkedIn. So this is my LinkedIn. Okay. Um, it can be frustrating actually because it's like peeling back an onion. Your deeply held beliefs um, sometimes hide, right? The cave you are afraid to enter holds the treasures you seek. But if you can dig in there, you will. I promise you, you will find a lot of treasure there. Okay. All right. So enough talking about movies. Right now, let's see if we can get back to um, to things that we were creating because it's fun. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. Let's see. I'm gonna go with. You know what? Let's pick travel writer. Let's pick travel writer. I'm gonna share my screen and put this up. See, present. Let's see. Maybe we'll spend about 10 minutes on this. Share screen. And there we go. All right. So recall that couple last week or the week before, we stopped at becoming an actor and having a painting career, and then I think we talked about somebody who wants to create movies as well, right? So we did TV show, band, movie V1 and V2. Yeah. So we already talked about movies. Let me slow down my talking a little bit. So now we're going to do travel writer. Okay. So what are so let's try something new tonight. Let's start with what are the objections. So what are the reasons that your mind will come to you and say when you say or when you think, I would like to become a travel writer. I would like to become a travel writer. And your mind says things like what? Like um, you've never traveled. Uh, we can't afford to travel. You oh you don't have time, for example. You don't have time. Um, who would want to see you on camera. Sometimes we have issues with our appearance, right? Um, who would want to read your article? We have judgments about um, our ability to write and our ability to be interesting, right? Um, Man, there is one big one I was going to add, and then we'll get to creating possibility with this example, okay? And when I do this, by the way, I don't think about these things beforehand. I just get on to show you that these are things that you can just um, genius is not about being smart. Genius does not mean smart, right? Genius, the word genius comes from the word genie, from the word jinn in Arabic, jinni, jinni, right? Is the idea that you have a genie, on your shoulder or behind you, whispering to you, technology secrets about how to make an iPhone, right? There's this, there's like conspiracy theories about advanced technology that we have actually coming from aliens, right? It's not aliens. It's just it's a genie or genius, right? So the last objection, or actually, I should call these judgments because that's what they are. Travel writer judgments, judgment, and then creating. Okay. Oh man. Oh, last one. You aren't a good writer. And sometimes, unfortunately, our teachers tell us this, our parents tell us these things. And sometimes they do it because they're trying to protect us and make life easier for us, actually, by not wanting to, by wanting to shield us from disappointment, for example. But that actually does the opposite because what happens is that you can pick up that that your loved one doesn't think that you're capable, and a worse that's actually worse for you long term psychologically in terms of your being who you're being your deep it becomes a deeply entrenched held belief implying that someone is always needing help and because that something is wrong with them fundamentally or they're not capable is worse than whatever disappointment someone would get from from losing or failing, right? Failing is not bad. It's not good or bad. It is what it is, right? So this is why, if you ever wonder like, why would my, you know, kindergarten teacher say something like that? It's often because they're dealing with similar judgments and they're almost like they're trying to m- make it okay that they have that judgment as well, right? And part of part of how you make it okay is to do it to other people. That makes sense. And most people are not aware of this. So you can't judge or blame or complain about this. Really, most of us we are not aware. If you're watching this right now, you are like the top 1% of humans, agency wise on the planet. Literally, if you're watching this right now, you are now in the category. You are the top 1% of humans in terms of agency, in terms of a sense of, no, I'm the one who's going to make whatever in my world happen. And I know that I can do that, right? Because you actually can. You actually can. If you read biographies of awesome people, and you see that from a young age, they were doing things. They were doing things. And we get lulled because of this stardom model of being discovered by some famous person. Oh, to make it, you have to be discovered by some famous person. What you're saying, um, what you're implying is that success happens because of other people deciding, not me deciding. You see how that works? So if you're waiting for somebody else to validate, to look at your work, to look at your portfolio, to judge your stuff, you're going to be waiting a long time. Okay. So judgments. You've never traveled. You can't afford to travel. You don't have time. You don't speak a foreign language. Right? Uh, who would want to see you on camera? Who would want to read your article? Your article. You aren't a good writer. Okay. So let's start creating. So let's say I just I just I I dropped you I dropped you out of a helicopter, right? If I dropped you out of a helicopter, let, let, let's say I dropped you down in New York City, by the way. Okay. I dropped you in New York City. You dropped out of a helicopter and I said, you have 1 day to become a travel writer, right? Right. You have 1 day. You have 1 day to become a travel writer. Okay. Now we're going to just sit with this and start thinking like that Kovac character, the main character in Altered Carbon. You kind of another example, the recent British remake of Sherlock Holmes with Benedict Cumberbatch, right? He has this thing called the Mind Palace, and that's a real thing. So it's a Mind Palace. It's a real like mental technique. He's constructing possibilities in his head, and he's running through scenarios in his head. It's called the Mind Palace. If you look it up on Wikipedia, you can find Mind Palace. So if you do the Mind Palace, and you just sit back and you start thinking, how can you shake the tree, so to speak? We're trying to shake the tree, see what apples fall down, shake the tree. So what we can do is we can play with the constraint of what travel is. What is travel? What is travel? So one thing we could do is without traveling, it could be an interview show, interview travelers. So that's one way we can get around this. You've never traveled. I can interview travelers. Or I can't afford travel. I can travel locally. Start there and let people, find it and be interested in it. You know, an example is Humans of New York. This photographer went around New York City, basically photographing random people, right? And then he turned it into a project. And I'm pretty sure that's a book on Amazon that you can order now. What would happen if you interviewed 10 travelers, transcribed it, and either posted those as a blog or that's a book actually, right? So watch this. What is travel? Interview travelers, right? 20 interviews equals a book, equals a book, right? Equals, you know, equals a book. Okay. Interview 20 travelers. So that's this equals a book equals 20 uh 20 blog articles equals 20 posts. And really, something I learned from my friend Philip Morgan is that one piece of content is actually three. So it's actually 60 posts because you write part. You get insights. One. one or two or three insights from one interview, right? 60 posts. So it's actually 60 posts and 60 articles, right? See how that works, right? So right there, if I just interview 20 travelers, okay, great. Where would I find travelers, right? You could contact travel agencies, right? You can contact you over the phone, call travel agencies, and you could talk to them. You could say, what are look for the let's see, you could look for the hubs or the watering holes, right? So look at a place where a lot of people travel, right? If you say, for example, you go to the airport and you just start talking to pilots. Well, pilots have been in many places. Start talking to pilots, right? Talk to pilots, right? You can talk to pilots. If you have to do this in a day, and if I offered you, $100,000 to make this happen in a day, you could make it happen. Actually, if you're willing to be flexible enough, right? And shake the tree and maybe be embarrassed, be embarrassed and look silly, right? So we can travel locally and we can write. Yeah, let's move this over here. Right, right. We can travel locally and maybe we can write about um, local travel, local travel, or commuting. So another idea is uh, write about commuting. 'Cause we're just getting started. We're just shaking the tree, poking the box. We're just getting things out there. Write about commuting, right? You can call it the NYC, and we've already made a name for it. See that? The NYC commute report, right? Any one of you guys, I give you whatever copyright or rights to use that. To use it right now, okay? Right? Um, interview 20 travelers. We call this copying. So another shortcut is copy people, travelers of NYC. Does that make sense? It doesn't have to make sense right now, but what we're doing is we are this is exercise. Okay, this is mind exercise for all of us. We are practicing two activities here: shake the tree and poke the box. Right, poke the box. Right. William Gibson calls this get lateral, which is the first time I actually heard of this concept. Right. So we're going to get lateral. Right. So high level. So concepts. You have a goal. I'm a travel writer. Right. All right. So what else can we think of doing here? I'm going to check if anybody has written any comments. So no comments yet. All right. Travel agencies. So we already have our content here. So we have achieved the goal of becoming a travel writer, right? Um, Another thing we could do is we could write about local travel. Right here, here we go. Right now, the example here, and again, we are pulling from other industries, right? So look across industries for um, for models. Alternative models. Alternative models. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this, look across industries, right? Actually, this is actually in the same industry. So watch this. In California, we had this public access channel. Oh, public access. You see that? So in thinking of something, other ideas come, right? Um, request to get on public access. Okay. What if they say no? Then we ask to volunteer, and then we learn, learn how to run shows, right? And then run our own show. Another thing we have to be willing to do is volunteer our way into opportunities. A lot of opportunities are actually hidden behind volunteer activity or working for cheap or working for free even. How I started my UX career and my actually graphic design as well, is working for free, either making up my own work, like making up work to do, or doing things for like nonprofits for free. Okay. So we can have a public access show. We can have the first public access shows. Let's go back to California's Gold. So California's Gold was a show, um, w- by a man named Huel Huel Hauser. Right. So he's this guy that walks around with a microphone and visits like random places in California, businesses, but he covered the entire state. And you could do that. You could say, um, you could do uh, a New York version of that. New York version of California's Gold with Huell Hauser, right? Okay. I'm going to give you one example, that I really love. This guy's really awesome. Um, so watch this. It's called, oh, Rate My Takeaway. Rate My Takeaway on YouTube. It's a YouTube channel. Okay. And this guy just goes around England, drives around England with a cameraman and a fold out table and a fold out chair. And basically, he blew up so much on YouTube. He actually has a lot of haters and a lot of people try to snipe his channel and thumbs down his videos. But a lot of this is done by competitors because he's just a fascinating, down to earth guy. He's a salt of the earth guy, right? And so he goes to all these different takeout or takeaway places around England, and to the point where now people are now sending him recommendations, right? So he's become such a fixture in the sort of England like takeaway scene that people come up to him all the time in his videos now. But if you look in his first 10 videos, people didn't know who he was. So he created that momentum, and now he has a big YouTube channel. Okay. All right. So let's do part two. We're going to do part two of travel writing, becoming a how to become a travel writer in one day. This was part one. Tomorrow we're going to do part two. All right, you guys. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream, and I'll see you guys later.